Hello world and welcome to PG.biz. It's the podcast series and of course a hello to our lovely listeners because yes, Brian is not with me. I am here. I'm your co-host Peggy Anne Salz and I thought, okay, everyone's been asking me in social, how's it going down in the dungeon? What is happening in the studio? So I thought, hey, take you down, let you have a look. And here it is. It's shaping up extremely well. Some great touches, thanks to my husband, Peter, and the trades he's been working with because, hey, we've got underfloor heating. We've got great heating here. We've got a window where there wasn't one before. And we've got uber cool lighting and chairs. We are set for the studio. And some of you have already reached out to me, especially here in the Cologne area, and you're like, hey, when you're ready to rock, we're ready to be on the show. So I am ready. Long before Gamescom, you can come over and check that out. But speaking about studios, speaking about shows, I was in a different studio recently. I was at GDC, and it was the 5 o'clock club. So it was The Groove, Into the Groove, at 5 o'clock at GDC with my guests. And they're on the show today because it was such a good show. So we have for you CK Wang. He is the man, CEO, co-founder of Kooapps, and Shobeir Shobeiri from Mintegral. And we talked about a number of topics. We talked about how to win with data, how to take a winning creative, how to monetize casual and hybrid casual, and we even learned how to speak a little bit of Tagalog. So it was a great show, great fun. Let's listen in. Let's take it away. This is Peggy Anne Salz, and this is The Groove at 5 o'clock with Mintegral. And I welcome into The Groove today my guest, Shobeir Shobeiri, Senior Director of Business Development at Mintegral in North America, and CK Wang, co-founder and CEO at Kooapps. And I'll get into both of those, but I'll start with you, Shobeir. You're a mobile advertising veteran, 12 years in the industry, worked with game companies like EA, Scopely, a long list, and previously even BizDev at Pebble, which is pretty wild. So we're into the groove. I think maybe part of your groove is being into the industry so deeply, looking at your track record. But when you're not doing that, how do you get into the groove? It's a space, it's a zone, it might even be a hobby. What does it for you?
Wow, that's a great question. I like to disconnect. I have a little dog, go for a nice walk around. I live in Sonoma. It's lovely up there and the hikes. So that's something I like, very California-esque. So I get a little groovy that way. One little story I thought I would share is when I started my career in tech and mobile, kind of the combination, one of the people who actually crashed in my apartment initially in San Francisco was Apurva Mehta, the founder of Instacart. But before he started Instacart, he first come to Silicon Valley. He connected with my old roommate, Avlok Holy, and they were doing this LinkedIn for lawyers, and he got just fed up. I'm tired of lawyers. I'm tired of it. And he's like, I want to go into Share.com, and create this app, and I want to make it instant, almost like Instagram, but for, carts, Instacart. So yeah, I've been very fortunate enough to be here in mobile since inception with cool stories like that. Great to share it with you.
Witness to it, actually. There you go, in history. Well, CK, you are co-founder of Kooapps. Kooapps, of course, has made over 30 titles, including Snake.io, Pictoworld, and 350 million downloads. So congratulations to that.
Thank you.
In addition, I was reading this, I thought, no, seriously? Teaching server-side development at the University of Washington? You do that now?
Yeah, not anymore. I taught for about 5 years between 2013 to 2018. Just really wanted to give back to the community. So started teaching at UW. And then, of course, when Kooapps got really busy, Yeah, I had to, pause that. But yeah, I really enjoyed my time there. The students there are really, really smart. It's really what I, am super passionate about and what I did at Microsoft. I was there for 5 years as well prior to teaching at UW and starting Kooapps. Talking about the groove, I think for me is playing StarCraft. Like I played it growing up. Now, even with the latest season, I'm ranked like high diamond, low masters league.
Wow.
But yeah, but now with 2 kids, not always a luxury possible. But
I also read, and you shared this with me, growing up in the Philippines, and a little Tagalog?
Yeah.
So how would you say, like, maybe welcome to the groove at 5 o'clock?
Oh, that one's maybe a little bit hard, but konti lang alam ko. Yeah, just like I only know a little bit.
There you go.
And now not having lived there for over, 15, 20 years, like I think it's a little bit rusty. Yeah, I grew up in the Philippines all my life. My parents are still there, and one of my co-founders in there, and we have a large team over there.
Here we are. 2023, and you have said, because I look at these things, I research, you have said ad monetization will need to shift toward a more unified approach. What is that, and what's the single biggest challenge to achieving that approach?
Sure, yeah, and by that I mean being able to monetize off of ads, but also monetize off of in-app purchase. I think hyper-casual is definitely becoming a little bit challenging and more mature, and lots of consolidation there. And so everybody's kind of battling and getting, how do we retain users longer? How do we monetize them? And so for us, it's really, polishing our game, because for in-app purchase players, they care a lot about the polish. Every single animation has to feel really good. And so, the hardest part really is to revamp the whole game, create AAA art, AAA animation. Every moment matters a lot. When players, when it's a free game and it's just ad monetized, you can sort of cut the corners and go quickly on a lot of things and just launch and test. And that's great. And we love that. But to keep, day 30 retention high, day 60 and getting in-app purchase conversion rates up, really, our team is really excited about that. And that's where they really enjoy polishing the game. And it's actually with Snake, we're in the process of that. And I think, over the next few months, we'll be launching our in-app purchase product, and the game will look very, very different. Yeah.
Snake Eye was a pretty cool game. You probably should tell people a little bit about it.
It's
been around. It's a pretty strong IP. It's been around for a couple of years, right?
Yeah. It's been around for a couple of years. We've been very fortunate that we've been able to grow it every single year. Started off as a hyper casual game, just with ads, simple art, simple colors like red snakes and green snakes. We actually revamped the entire IP in 2020 with AAA art, and now we're adding on top of that. And so from the entire studio, everyone's a gamer on our team. And so when they looked at, Snake.io, they're like, hey, what can we do with this? And it's really, building a game that we want to play ourselves. We ended up adding meta. We added meta progression, live events, customizations. We're adding a lot of game modes. Actually, our next feature, we're adding play with friends, where you can start a party and your friends joining and then be able to play together, real-time multiplayer. And then after that, it's like accessories with like hats, wings, and all of that. So we're super excited. I've been, fortunate that like the IP has been really strong and growing every year.
So that's an exciting story in itself, because, you think about, okay, live ops, that extends the life of the game, but then you bring in everything and then the community and all the rest of it. And it just shows how much a studio can get out of a game if it thinks it through. And your team must be excited too, because it's like, hey, now we can really do something different and exciting. And something also that isn't just skinning, right? It was getting a little dull.
Yeah. For us, we actually call each of our skins characters, and we have a narrative, and each of the skins characters also have a bio, and we introduce the character. In our narrative, we have different worlds that the snakes come from, and they're called biomes. And we have 8 biomes, and each of the snakes come from one of those biomes, and the personality we put a lot of effort into. And so I think we're one of the very few hyper-casual studios that care about the IP and care about the narrative and care about the world and why people are playing our game. And I think that that's a big part of our success.
Yeah, hyper casual is like this. I think of hyper casual as like the parallel to like, social media where you get on Snap or you go to Instagram and you have the story, which is like 5 seconds to maybe like, 10 seconds long. Hyper casual is those kind of same genres where the games have gone from long form to as short as 5 seconds. right? Like, and they go up to like a minute. But I think you were talking about like, oh, you got an IP that you've driven from the hyper casual to like almost like a casual base.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you do ads and you do like, basically in-apps and other types of ad revenue. Where do you kind of fit in the ad units that could optimize? Because it's interesting, you've evolved from the hyper casual, which usually has like 5 placements generally in most hyper casual games within 1 minute. But then you guys have a little bit of a longer play time in your game specifically too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So our users, on their first day, like that they play Snake, they play about 15, 20 minutes. They'll die like 10 times and then watch a lot of ads. But on the by the day 30, like they're really good at the game. They play for an hour or two and they maybe die once. And so the way we monetize is very different from the early life cycle versus later life cycle. Early life cycle, it's very interstitial driven. Because they die a lot and we can show interstitials, whereas late life cycle is very RV driven, where now they care about the skins, they care about the characters, they've read the character bios, and they want to collect these characters, and we run live events. They actually have to watch an RV to play the live events. For the, I think for day 30 users, pretty much 90% of them will participate in all of our live events. And so it's very, very meaningful revenue for us. And so, and so we're super excited to be able to, build more game modes and all of that. And actually with the party mode, they'll be able to add friends and play together and also spectate each other. Cool. So once, say we're in the same party and then I die and then I can watch, how you guys are playing and share the fun. We're really, really excited. Yeah.
Super smart. I have to follow up on the live ops and the live events because, I've seen the evolution of that. And a lot of it was very straightforward or maybe picking up on seasonality, just sort of easy hooks and easy ideas. But you're obviously pushing the envelope with your game. What are the live ops looking like? Yeah, the live ops are doing really well for us. I would say when we run them, revenue is probably like 20-30% higher. ARPDAU on a daily basis. And so we run them once a month. We release four new characters, and it's themed like, let's say this month I think is space theme. Next month, TBD, we know, secret. We'll release next month. Don't give it away now. No. Okay.
And I think just our community is very, very involved and they love it. And we get a lot of feedback and a lot of them even say, hey, here's a new idea for your next live event. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? We have even people already submitting, character sort of sketches. And that's how we know that people care about this metaverse and this we know that UGC will work is because we already organically get ideas from our community. And so, live events work really well. It's objective driven. And so they have to get a certain score to unlock the first character and second character and then third character. And then the last one is like a boss snake that is like a legendary status that has a lot of details. And then they actually compete in a leaderboard. So every 500 players will be on one leaderboard and only top 200 get the character. And so, it's pretty competitive at the very end, but the initial conditions are very easy. And so that allows the whole funnel to be really, really good in terms of allowing hyper casual players to play, but then also, casual and then mid-core and hardcore players. So I would say our hardcore players are the ones that get, the top 200 and even, top 100 or top 50 in the live event. And so we've really thought deep on how to design a game that we call as unified casual, which is, hyper casual, casual, mid-core, hardcore. We want to cater to everybody. And we know that
a new genre.
Unified casual. Because I was thinking like you've heard about the mid-casual, but that's cool.
Yeah. And we know that, future of UA will be less and less targeting, more privacy. And for us from beginning, we've been like, hey, we want to design a game truly for everybody. And so, we're very fortunate. Snake is, doing really well.
We've seen, you've talked about the involvement of like a hyper casual and casual IP to like a more unified casual, which I like that name a lot. In the ad tech world, I've been in it for since inception mobile. You had the traditional banner, interstitial, which is the full screen ads. And the two things that really has changed really in since the mobile has launched is rewarded video, which you were talking about, you've used, and playables. Playable being like a mini game. And those I actually have seen the most success for most of our partners as far as Lyft is concerned. And the playables that was really catchy, speaking of like content, is those that like have like a fun little interactive at the very beginning that everybody's like, aha, I got to play with that. Like, do you use like playables as an active way to grow user base? And then do you have like a best part of your game mechanics into that playable, or?
Playables work really well for us. I would say probably like 30% of our downloads are playables, and then the rest are video.
That's impressive.
And then playables, you know, we'd really want to thank Mintegral and Mindworks. They're exclusive or playable partner, and they make the playables with us, with our creatives team, and we've been very successful making these playables. And we have tested sort of like alternative, like non-game, like sort of mechanics, because we've heard like, you know, other companies do that and do really well, but those hasn't really resonated with our audience. So right now our playables that do the best are just, you know, the real gameplay, and we see really good retention. Typically playables have slightly better retention than video. Yeah, we've definitely tested a lot, but I think that, you know, the basic game, the core game, and enjoying that, I think is what we've seen to be most successful.
It sounds to me as if you even come in and start to shape, or at least consult or advise on a really awesome playable, what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, we get hands-on, and we have kind of a different approach. We have this platform called Play Turbo. Just want to kind of you know, play with the creative, the design, the skins, videos. You can. It's easy.
And localization. Yeah, self-serve. We localize in 15 languages. That's what helps us a lot.
Yeah. So speaking of like creating like a playable, you can launch it and localize. I've seen from our like you know, boost effect on playables up to like a 40% uplift for our partners in like the US and like the big markets in China, and then up to like 80% uplift sometimes in you know, up in developing countries, even to a certain extent top tier markets like Japan and Korea. Yeah.
What are the, just curious, what the key components are of a playable that can hit these numbers? Is it just what he's saying, just be very imaginative with your narrative, use real gameplay? It seems like there's something more that you're advising him that maybe you could advise everyone.
Yeah. So one of the big bets we've done is we've been 100% bidding as a network. Okay. It's something that like we went all in 2021 early. I guess the initial mediation was Max. They got acquired by App 11. We went in with them at that time. Mopub, when it was at Twitter, and then Level Play and Iron Source. So we said this is the way we're going to get in, and the reason why is traditionally the waterfall setup was so manual, so granular. You're literally talking about like $1, $5, $10, and you're putting like every ad unit in every country and ad tags up to like $100 for some of the top premier applications like his. So someone like CK is like, I don't need to do all that. I just go live, and it's almost, I call it like stock trading, but for advertising. We're bidding in real time at 24 hours a day for his inventory now. And I've seen it up, you know, the ARPDAU revenue stream go up for most of our publishers. And so I hear great success with people like CK and others, and it makes me excited. I mean, that's been like a, you know, pretty exciting thing for us as a network and so forth. Now, we've been able to go from a no-name network to be the top 10. In the rankings, which has been pretty exciting with AppsFlyer, Adjust, 10gen.
And top 3 for us.
And the other bet, I have to be honest, is we went all in with iOS 14 Plus. So we've been able to go and have like the compatibility there. So if anybody says we want to use Scan, we're like, fine, we're able to do that. And that we generally advise people to say like, you know, there's a 48-hour window to help kind of align the MMP data with ours, and generally by then you should know will perform well. And then there's like, it depends on the app. If it's hyper casual, usually within like 48 to 7 days max, that game is optimized. Some casual, it's 14 days, and then some, you know, IP-based games beyond 30 days to 120 days. So,
are you testing? Are you experimenting with Scan?
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody is experimenting.
Okay.
For us, like actually almost all of our campaigns, I'd say 90%, 95% of our downloads are just CPI, straight up CPI campaigns. So not like, you know, not IEP based, not ROAS based, not retention based. Most of our downloads are CPI based, and so I've learned a lot from Mintegral and other ad networks as well, but also partly with our game designers. When we design games, we design it such that it transcends, you know, all genders, all cultures, all ages, and therefore we're able to buy, you know, CPI based and not have to target.
So tell me a little bit about how switching from the waterfall to in-app bidding, how that's had an impact on ARPDAU, maybe even some shortcuts to increase it?
By now, like Max and Iron Source both have very easy A/B tests. in their platform that you can just set up like, with 3 line items versus a bidding. Let's see, what the difference is, and hopefully it's the same or better on the in-app bidding. And then you can just say, hey, B wins, let's apply that, and we're done. And we never have to like sort of seasonally change all these lines. And then the hard part with the line items is you have to like catch the season as the season moves. Like for example, last year, November was the new December. In terms of UA and CPM, like we saw the uplift come way earlier, like in November was our highest CPM, and like and everything moved felt like 3 weeks earlier.
It is interesting you mentioned that. I mean, last year I noticed the pre-Thanksgiving was up through even around Christmas, when generally you saw it was through Christmas, sometimes even past, because everybody got new devices. So there was a much more spend in the beginning of the year that was trickled over. I think the other thing, speaking of A/B testing, like testing a similar ad or something similar in different design, has been a big key success for our clients as well when they've decided and tested out on the creatives or other ad units. We've seen, actually, speaking of bidding uplifts, generally around like 22% growth in the US, and like an uplift like 30% to 40% in places like China, Japan, Europe as well, just by using bidding on the revenue stream.
You're also seeing a lot in the creatives. Can you share something along the lines of the wildest one that brought in perhaps the biggest results? Because sometimes they're surprising. I don't try to actually pick a winning creative anymore, because I'm 50% of the time you're not going to make it, but you see so many, and also working with customers like CK.
Yeah, no, okay. There's been a couple last year we had. One, speaking of like hyper casual in games, by this Goodroyd, it was Snow Race, which is like a simple racing with like a snow. Part of it, they were able to like get about 100 million installs, and they reached #1 on Android overall in the App Store last year. We were part of that. Like we were generating about 10 to 20,000 installs a day, but that's like 40% of their entire ad spend with just Mintegral alone, and they were getting around $20 to $30 CPM revenue back for this application. So. Yeah, it was very, very healthy results in a short amount of time.
It's always interesting to hear from a company like yours how to get the best results, because that requires a deeper partnership, a little bit of understanding, a little bit more of insight into, for example, what CK wants to achieve, his business goals, and that understanding. But maybe you can tell me about that dynamic and how it can work and what those benefits can be, because if it works really well, the returns are massive.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, again, CK was talking about evolution of products. I mean, in the ad space, if you look back like 5-10 years, it was all about like the burst campaigns, getting up the charts, getting the eCPI so we could cut the costs down, get the ranks. What did that mean? Like getting up the charts for your top 10 in Apple, you were getting 100,000 installs per day. That means if you spent like 10,000 on Mintegral and got 10,000 and you ranked top 10, you're getting from $1, it went to 10 cents to eCPI. So now we're doing the complete opposite because of, like you mentioned, like it's bidding and it's quality traffic through scan and other products. I say let's start really small to understand their the metrics and KPIs for that app. Each app is different. Each IP and game is different. And instead of saying like, okay, traditionally may have been like $1,000 spent. I said, give me 250 on iOS, 250 on Android, just on US. And let's see if we could actually reach those goals every single day. And then let's ramp up to 500 to 1,000 and beyond. Because the last thing you want to do is like, just have like instant push and crash and fail. And it's not just through Mintegral. I would advise everybody to do that through other channels as well. There's about a healthy 12 networks that do supply side SDKs, which are on these bidding platforms. And I'd say there's a few like high quality DSPs you probably could do the same thing and make sure they throttle through the best channels.
And as you said yourself, now it isn't about going big. It's about starting small, knowing the signs, maybe sharing also what some of the signs are. When do I double down? And when do I say, no, maybe I'll listen to Shobeir and not go all out?
Man, that's a good scenario. I mean, I guess like it ages me a little bit. When I was younger, there was this funny ad that Larry Bird and Michael Jordan had by, I think it was Lay's, the chips, and you just can't have one, right? You can't just, because like that's the idea is like the marketers are like trying to get as many push as possible. The quality assurance factor is very key. So if they're getting returns from the list of users we've gotten, say for CK and his snake app, he wants to buy on Mintegral, and he's like, look, I want ROI. What does that mean? He wants the users to come back 30 days, he mentioned. Okay, let's make sure we start with like $250 that they could last the 30 days within the ecosystem. From there, it's like, fine, let's now double down. And what was effective? Was it the playable ad you use? Let's double down on that. Can we test other playables in the process? And maybe you could have different types of ad units that actually can grow within, both like in one geo to other products. Because each ad unit has its own different realm. He mentioned reward video. That's still our strongest actually ad unit overall. And within our network, I'd say about 80 to 90% of our overall full screen video. We're going towards this all, encompassing of products being like television is the next wave, digital television,
CTV.
right? And like a lot of the game studios are exploring this idea of CTV, like how do we connect our games to the television eyeball, where that's where it is. And I think you guys are technically like a social network. You're just a game, but like you're technically a social network, and it eventually will evolve to having different types of screens. And I think that the digital monitors will be part of as your handheld device to your home device that you go to, and create like, maybe you could have different snakes going to different communities. That's the idea. I could see it.
Because you're going to have your parties. So that's
exactly.
That's built. That's baked in social right there.
For sure. Yeah. And we're pretty excited about connected TV, and we're definitely looking into that. I think the hardest part is like sort of controls, like sounds like could be a little bit different per TV and all of that. But we're really excited about connected TV. We think it's a perfect format for Snake. For like, let's say like pick to word is a little bit harder as a game mechanic for TV, but for Snake, it's a no-brainer. So we're very excited. Yeah, and it would look really good. And
really
it's
good.
like, and then all your friends can watch while you play, or even join you on their phones. And like, we're very, very excited about connected TV.
You got a very strong community, and they're interested in the mechanic. They love the way it looks. They want polish, and that carries over also to the ad creatives, right? And everyone's talking about performance creatives, or how do you balance data and creative, because it has to be appealing, has to hit the numbers. Share some of what your approaches are.
Like I would say, we test 5 videos every week, and then we get like 1 winner every 4 to 6 months.
Wow.
So it definitely is pretty hard. Our team is very diligent at just coming up with ideas and throwing darts on a wall, and not afraid to test creatives and having it like flop. I would say just like a lot of testing. There's also something that's really important is certain networks are better for creatives testing. I'd say creatives testing, probably Unity is the best. They have like a status on your creative. It's like red, yellow, and green, and then you'll be able to understand that testing much better. And their machine learning is based off of creatives, and there's pros and cons with that. Like it's a little bit more volatile, because like if you have a new creative, then your campaign might tank or might spike up.
Because it doesn't know the creative. It's not familiar with it.
Whereas a lot of other ad networks, like the learning is based on the app. Most usually. But with Unity, it's based on the creative. And so that's kind of interesting the way they've set it up. And so we actually do almost all of our creatives testing on Unity, and that's been easier. Definitely, it's a numbers game. Like there's no secret. We of course get a lot of advice from Shobeir and his team, especially on the playable side. And then we have an art team that makes videos, and we just keep testing, and there's no such thing as a bad idea. We just test, and then measure.
I'm also seeing marketers, a couple of them coming up with their own metrics. It's like, well, if I see a certain cohort is looking at a video for a certain number of seconds, then that's a new type of metric for them, because they're seeing that after a few seconds, it's this type of user. It's helping them funnel into that high, medium, and low as well. So they're coming up with a couple of their own.
I mean, speaking of that, the IVR, like the viewership of video and reward, and especially playables are insane. There could be up to like 80 to 90% entire ad watched. To the full length. So that's the interesting thing about those data sets on a playable ad, because it's just so interactive. You get them at the first few seconds.
That's interesting, because I'm looking into some research myself, very much into the attention economy now. Probably some good news for you guys, because looking at all of the platforms. There is a hierarchy of platforms, and guess what? The platform that has our undivided and, above all, sustained attention is mobile games. There you go. So I guess it's break out the champagne or similar here.
Yeah. It's 5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock. Let's do it. We've got it. We've got a reason to have that. And another point around that is exactly that. You've got sustained attention. That gives you the building blocks of scale, but I'd like to hear from both of you how you approach scale. You know, you have a winning creative, you have a winning game. Let's talk about scale.
For us, it's all data. I'd say creatives, if you have like 20 to 30 IPM, that's like really, really good. And if you have a 50 IPM, you have a unicorn and you need to like run as fast as you can. And don't tell anybody or something.
Don't tell anybody.
But like, yeah, so I'd say, IPM, that's sort of the range we're looking at. And then in terms of ROAS, I would say, depends on your day 30 retention, but like, 40% ROAS. If you have really good day 30 retention, you can go down to like 35, 30. And so being very, very performance driven and metrics driven and numbers driven, is really how we scale. And once we have those targets, we essentially have unlimited budget. So as long as we're hitting our ROAS targets, we're willing to buy unlimited amounts and unlimited spend. And so actually the budget that we set for every ad network that we work with is typically, 2 to 3x like the highest spending day in the last 14 days. And so there's a lot of room to grow. But we just have very strict sort of ROAS targets that we're very, very careful with because we're actually a bootstrap company. We don't have VC funding. And so we're very, very careful with how we spend and very scientific there. And so, and that's something that I personally watch myself, make sure that, we spend thoughtfully and don't overspend. And, it's fine to grow slower. That's fine if that's what it means. And then also, in opportunities where we can grow faster because our product had a big improvement or whatnot, then we do. So, yeah.
I've generally seen like games, speaking of like the games industry, it's about 20%. If you hit like a 20% ROAS on average, then that's a very successful campaign we've been able to run for an IP. And it just depends on genre. Some genres need 50% in a short amount of time. Some genres are a little bit more flexible in less.
And global reach? Are you excited about experimenting with more global reach?
Yeah. Global reach is huge for us. We actually localize our games in 15 different languages. Our number 1 geo is the US, but our number 2 is Saudi Arabia. Number 3 is Brazil.
Okay.
Number 4 is then UK, which is I would say more unique to us than a lot of other companies. And so we're pretty global as a game for Snake.io. I think it speaks to the mechanics, speaks to I think our game designers being able to create something that really is unified, universal, that'll transcend again culture, age, gender, and that's something that everybody likes to play. Yeah.
Your return on ad spend probably is pretty good when you place like Saudi Arabia because you're spending really cheap CPI and you're getting like high ROI probably for the use in just even on a smaller scale.
Yeah. I would say our rank in Saudi Arabia is definitely higher than the US. I think
Interesting.
we're like top 20 games like the entire year.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you have. You have global inventory. You have a ton of it. Can you share some concepts, some campaigns that work, for example, in China, for example, better than in other regions?
Yeah, I mean, so what we've seen, one of the type of ad units we see that does really well, these like kind of end cart within an ad. So like you play an ad, it's a short version of like a video ad, and then an end card pops up. The end card could be another kind of playable, could be just another quick interstitial. That's performed very well. We've seen, the performance be up to like 20% uplift, 40% uplift, depending on the developer who wants to, buy on those. And in a culture like China versus the United States, where even though this is a consumer-driven culture, over there, they're mobile first. I mean, this is in the last like 10 years or so, you're talking about 800 million people live on a device, and they went skipping like a laptop straight to their phone, and they're very open to advertising instead of like spending. They'd rather do ads to like watch an ad and actually like, play. And then the game studios love that. It obviously generates good revenue.
So we almost go full circle because what I was going to do now is talk about, what excites you looking ahead. We have a crystal ball almost. But I've read a couple articles interviewing you, CK, and you are very bullish about UGC combined with social and also metaverse. So, you call it the next big opportunity. I'd like to understand what makes you so convinced.
Sure. Yeah. I think, first off, definition of metaverse may be a little bit different for
Yeah,
everybody.
I was going to say, it's like
for
that
us,
metaverse, is it? It got legs, for one thing.
yeah. I think for us, as long as there are creators, the community is creating content, we call that a metaverse.
Okay.
And everybody can create their own content, their own level inside Snake and the experience that they want. And that's like a small universe in of itself. We call that then metaverse. And so we're really, really bullish on that. It's really hard to implement. You kind of have to create like a little compiler and allow people to upload levels and have scripts and all of that. And so, engineering wise, it's very, very difficult. But that's what, we're heading towards. And so, right after, playing with friends and at purchase, it's UGC next for us. And
it's
so
like social on steroids. Is
yeah,
what it is.
yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. We know it makes him excited. Shobeir, what about you? You're looking into the future and you're excited about something. We talked a little bit about CTV. That's, of course, a big one. But there are other things. I mean, there's like brands and games. They're breaking into games. It's going to be huge. It's going to be massive. What gets you excited?
I'm more excited about how can like a brand actually get connected to games that's not there. I mean, reward and playables are like one step. I think like tech, like Snake.io is an IP that brands could create and use as an ad unit and collaborate with Kooapps and Mintegral, and then probably get results that they've never seen before with real life. Maybe if you're a toy that makes snakes and you want to sell it and make it in real time, and that's like where I'm picturing advertising going. That's the closest thing with games and ads.
Got a business idea for you.
Yeah.
I can see all the different colored snakes. I could totally see it.
Yeah.
Totally see it.
Get a cat slapping it or something.
Yeah. Go viral. I could totally see it. I get the vibe. And we've had a vibe here. Thanks so much, CK. Thanks so much, Shobeir. Been great having you
Peggy.
at the 5 o'clock club.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
This show is all about how to do your job better, how to make an amazing game, how to market it, and you have a say. So if you have a story or know someone we need to shine a light on, then we would love to hear from you.
We want to hear from you. We want to reflect the reality of the mobile games market in all its wonderful complexity and strangeness. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any feedback for us, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@pocketgamer.biz. You can find us on Twitter @PGBiz, and you can reach out to us through the pocketgamer.biz website. If you're interested in listening to all of our podcasts, you can find them at pocketgamer.biz/podcast, and we would love to hear your thoughts on future shows.
And we've got you covered on all the major platforms, so subscribe to the audio podcast, as Brian said. Look for us on YouTube. If you want to read it, hey, you can do that too, because we have a companion post for you as well on the pocketgamer.biz website.
Tune in again for the next edition of the pocketgamer.biz podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you in the near future. Until then, I'm Brian Baglow.
I'm Peggy Anne Salz, and that's a wrap until next week.